بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله، والصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه والنور عرش أفضل الأنبياء والمرسلين، حبيبنا وسيدنا وسندنا وشفيعنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. أما بعد، قال الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويقول الذين كفروا لست مرسلا قل كفى بالله شهيدا بيني وبينكم ومن عنده علم الكتاب. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters in Islam, I would like to greet you with the warmest of Islamic greetings, and that is none other than Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First and foremost, we would like to bid our sincerest of condolences on this grievous night, for tonight marks none other than the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam. And therefore we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us a fraction of the grievances that the Imam of our time, Imam al-Mahdi ajarallahu ta'ala faraja, is suffering during this time. Over the last few nights, we've had the privilege of talking about Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salam, and we have linked the phenomenon of Muslims losing their faith, of Muslims being misguided, of Muslims becoming disenchanted with the true essence of Islam, with the very fact that the true message of Islam was not accepted on the scale that it was meant to. And we discussed several factors that were the cause of this. The predominant factor we did speak about, however, was the fact that Imam Ali alayhi salam was the hero of the Battle of Badr, of the hero of the Battle of Uhud, the Battle of Khandaq, the Battle of Khaybar, and the Battle of Hunayn, two of which, Badr and Hunayn, being mentioned in the Quran, and Imam Ali alayhi salam would be the hero of these battles in defense of the life of the Holy Prophet and the spread of the beautiful religion of Islam. And what we discussed was that the Arabs of the time, based on their pre-Islamic Arabian traditions, would not let it go that they may have lost a member of their tribe to the blade of Ali ibn Abi Talib, despite the fact that one crucial factor existed, that these people at the time that were fighting against the Prophet were people that had committed an act of evil and murder with murderous intention, and therefore the right to self-defense was available. However, the tribalistic tendencies would continue on, and that was one of the factors, but we didn't discuss the other factors that were at play here. And these factors would ultimately lead to us misunderstanding the message of the Prophet and also mishandling the message, being the Quran. And we discussed last night that there is an erroneous claim that the Quran was 7 different versions or 7 different Arabic dialects. And if were it not for the 3rd Khalifa, which had no appointment directly from Allah or the Holy Prophet, in fact, it was rarely even acknowledged by the Holy Prophet, this individual would go on to select the one we have today and go on to burn the rest. And we discussed that this is a historical fallacy. This does not exist. In fact, the Imams of the generations to come, such as the 5th Imam, would come on to say that such a statement on its own is a lie. You are attributing a lie to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Indeed, the Quran is one, revealed to the one, by the one. So therefore, it is wrong for Muslims to claim today that the Quran had several versions. So let's go back for a second. Yesterday, I mentioned, and I said, hold on to this point because I'm going to come back to it. We said that at the time of the day of Ghadir, the Holy Prophet of Islam would go on to mention one important factor. He would say, "Inni tarikum fikum al-thaqalain, kitab Allah wa itrati ahlul bayti." So he says, I leave with you 2 things of great importance that are very weighty, and the first one being the Book of God, and then the second one being his Ahlul Bayt. Now, if you sit down and think about it, based on the information we discussed last night, we discussed that during Abu Bakr's caliphate, there was no Quran available. Meaning, when the Prophet of Islam would go on to mention this fact, that I'm going to leave these two things behind for you, then he would also have to know the fact that the people didn't have a codified book, much like the one that we have today. So, what was he referring to on the day of Ghadir? And that's what we're going to be talking about today, because we mentioned that Abu Bakr would go on to hire people like the likes of Zayd ibn Thabit, who would go on to try and compile it. And then we also have a collection of narrations where, for example, they would remember one part of the verse, and then another person would say, well, I remember this part of this verse in this surah. And despite the fact that there were people attempting to memorize the Quran at the time, there was no one that had the complete knowledge of the Quran end to end like that of Amirul Mu'mineen Imam Ali alayhi salam. And so what we're going to be discussing right now is, first of all, if there was a book of God, where was it when the Prophet was mentioning it? Secondly, what we're going to be talking about is how the Quran was treated after the death of the Holy Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and ultimately, what is the hidden secret behind the knowledge of the Quran that many Muslims have gone on for generations to miss? For we have seen that the Quran has not been a uniting faculty among Muslims. This Quran that we have is a book, and within that book there are many secrets and many pieces of information that could influence the human positively, yet when it falls into the wrong hands, it can lead to factions of Islam, the likes of ISIS, the likes of the Taliban, the likes of Al-Qaeda, the likes of many other extremist Islamic factions that exist today, and sadly we have to answer for these mistakes, these horrible, atrocious actions that go against the teachings of the Holy Prophet and his blessed lineage, the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam. So on the first level, we have to acknowledge one fact. The only person that had the Quran in its chronology, meaning in chronological order, the way it was revealed to the Prophet, was none other than Amirul Mu'mineen Imam Ali alayhi salam. In fact, he makes mention to say that it was by decree of Allah that the Prophet would go on to, when he would receive revelation, it was a must for him to reveal it to me, and Imam Ali would be acting as a scribe. And therefore, when you see after the Prophet's death, the events that would happen, as you know, Imam Ali alayhi salam would be washing the body of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Meanwhile, the rest of the Muslims were plotting and electing the likes of Abu Bakr to be the Khalifa. In fact, history dictates that during the Prophet's funeral, only 6 people showed up. And you would think that someone who had Muslims at this time in the tens of thousands, more people would be there to pay their respects. However, they said that we were out doing an election. And when we question this phenomenon to other Muslim historians of other schools, what you'll find the excuse they say is that the reason why nobody paid their respects to the Holy Prophet of Islam was because that they had to decide who was going to take over after the Holy Prophet of Islam's death, and therefore they had to host a mandatory election, and the continuity of leadership is of the utmost importance for Islam to continue. And I say, subhanAllah, you're on the right track. It is true that the continuity of leadership is of the utmost importance. If it is so important that you're not willing to pay your respect to the Prophet, why didn't the Prophet just say something to say this is going to be the leader after me, rather than leave it in your hands where you can make up rigged elections and go on from generation to generation, killing each other over this title, misleading people over this title, and then come today, 1400 years later, with nothing but a chaotic religion that has colonialism and murder in its name? That's a question. Why wouldn't the Prophet just elect a leader if it's so important? And he did. He did. Now, we have to go back and understand a couple of points here. The first point is, if we say the Prophet came for 23 years after going public with his prophethood, he lived 23 years from the age of 40 to 63, and he would go on to reveal verses of the Quran to people, wouldn't you say that from an academic or any kind of historian's perspective, that Prophet Muhammad did not leave a Quran behind. And if he didn't leave a Quran behind and the caliphs after him would go on to argue over how we want to compile it, wouldn't that make him not so much of a good messenger? Because his whole purpose as a messenger apparently was to just come forth with a book, leave us behind, and not give us any kind of leadership advice, and leave it to us to discuss and to give our own opinions, which, by the way, we strongly condemn, because the opinions of humans have never been able to compare to the divine ordinance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first question is, well, where was this Quran? Now, the second thing we want to understand here is, let's go back for a second and understand the mindset of the people. So we need to figure something out here, because was Imam Ali alayhi salam's leadership only usurped because the people did not like the fact that he had killed from their tribe and because of tribalistic tendencies? No, 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 no. Because Imam Ali's station is beyond that of our comprehension. It is beyond that of this world. Imam Ali's status is one that Allah has decreed several times in the Quran, and every single Muslim today gets a chance to recite it in their salat. Today, when I go on to challenge a typical Muslim, I say, recite Surah Fatiha. They recite it. Now, when we go to the final two verses, you say, Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. We say, guide us on the straight path. And then we say what? Sirat al-ladina an'amta alayhim ghayr al-maghdubi alayhim wala-ddallin. The path that's set forth by you, who have bestowed your blessings upon, and not the people who have gone astray and invoked your anger. Now ask any typical Muslim to define this term, Sirat al-Mustaqim. Define it for me. What does it mean? Well, they'll come and tell you and say, well, someone who believes in Allah, okay, good. Someone who prays, okay. Someone who fasts, okay. Someone who recites Quran regularly, okay. Someone who gives charity, okay. And yeah, that's about it. I said, okay, well, according to the Wahhabis, Shias are all doomed to hellfire, and they do all of those things. So again, let's go back. What is Sirat al-Mustaqim? What is the straight path? Oh, someone who prays. Well, you know what? For us, ISIS prays 5 times a day, and fasting and all this stuff is existent in other factions of Islam that are quite evil in nature. So how could someone be on the right path simply through actions? And if you've been paying attention to my lecture series thus far, you understand that actions are merely a small portion of the entirety that is Islam. So what is Sirat al-Mustaqim? And you'll find 9 times out of 10, people will define actions to describe a concept. You cannot describe a concept with just actions. Tell me, what is Sirat al-Mustaqim? Now, brothers and sisters, you'll notice that when you go to the door of Ahlul Bayt, you will get answers to these conceptual faculties in the Quran that you will never, ever, ever get in any other school of Islam, because they still argue about what these terms mean. So, when you go to Sirat al-Mustaqim, you see that the Ahlul Bayt say Sirat al-Mustaqim is Ali ibn Abi Talib. Not the path of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Sirat al-Mustaqim is Ali ibn Abi Talib. So the person that understands that, now we can go to the next verse, Sirat al-ladina an'amta alayhim, the path set forth by those that Allah has bestowed his blessings upon, and not those that have gone astray and invoked God's wrath. It's a very clear picture of what God is describing. He's talking about people. He's talking about individuals that will go astray and invoke his wrath. And then he'll say, and you ask Allah in your prayer, guide me on that straight path. Good. Hold on to that. School of Ahlul Bayt has defined something. And when you see that, when you understand these concepts through the school of Ahlul Bayt, then the doors will start to open in your mind. For example, we have another verse in the Quran, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. And hold firm on the rope of Allah and do not disunite. Brothers and sisters, what is this rope of Allah? We mentioned that there was schools that would come that would say this is a literal rope that would fall out of the heavens for me to climb on, and I shouldn't disunite anybody in the process. And then there's another group that said the rope is a metaphorical rope and we shouldn't let go. In fact, today many people come and say that this rope of Allah is a unifying factor between all Muslims of all beliefs to all come together, which does not exist because the fundamentals are a huge issue. We cannot take light and darkness and mix them up together. We cannot go ahead and take misguided individuals and take them to the guided ones and say we are all the same. We have to have a right answer to several phenomena that would happen throughout Islamic history. So whenever we say hold on to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ahlul Bayt come and say that that is the walayat of Imam Ali alayhi salam. That the rope of Allah is the acceptance of Imam Ali's authority, and therefore Muslims hold on to Imam Ali's authority and do not disunite. Once again, in Surah Naba, Naba in the Arabic language means news. For example, if we say there is a Nabi, like Nabi Isa is somebody who is a possessor. Nabi comes from Naba, a possessor of important news. Surah Naba in the Quran starts with أَمَّا يَتَسَاءَلُونَ عَنِ النَّبَإِ الْعَظِيمِ. And they ask you of the news, عَنِ النَّبَإِ الْعَظِيمِ, the great news. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, أَنَا النَّبَأِ الْعَظِيمِ أَنَا آيَةُ اللَّهِ الْعُظْمَى. Imam Ali is telling the people that I am the greatest sign of God among you. Is there a sign greater than I? And then look at what the verse says afterwards. هُمْ فِيهِ مُخْتَلِفُونَ. The news that they are in disagreement about. Is there a great news in Islam more pronounced than the day of Ghadir that for 1400 years Muslims would go and disagree about it? When you have ma'rifat of Ahlul Bayt, when you have ma'rifat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, all of a sudden these conceptual things that have gone over our heads for several years start coming to fruition, in the sense that these concepts actually have individuals behind them that would guide us towards the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather than people going on for generation to generation expressing their own 2 cents worth of what the rope of God means, what the hand of God means, what the news means, what this book means, what that means, what this verse means, what the straight path means. And then we would fight for generation upon generation. And that's what I meant yesterday when I say when you're dealing with the school of Ahlul Bayt, you are dealing in absolutes. So now we go back to the day of Ghadir. Was it enough to say that the only people that had a problem with Imam Ali's leadership would be the people that had lost their family members in wars, fought against the Prophet, whom Imam Ali alayhi salam had fought and taken their lives in the battle? Absolutely not. For the Quran again makes a huge mention of one other faculty that would be against this phenomenon. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exiles Shaitan from his station, Shaitan says what? Oh Allah, I will stay where? Sirat al-Mustaqim. I will stay on the straight path. And for as long as the humans try to attempt to come onto the straight path, I will misguide them. So now what we're finding as a day of Ghadir is the final message of the Holy Prophet. As you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Ma'idah, Ya ayyuha rasul, balligh ma unzila ilayka min rabbih. O Prophet of God, go and announce that news which we have bestowed upon you. And if you do not do that, then you have lost the entirety of the message of Islam. And do not have fear, for there was fear in the Prophet's heart because he knew the extent of the level of evil that would come at play, that would try to hinder the final message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now we go back to the day of Ghadir, brothers and sisters. Rasulullah is standing there. He says, Inni tarikum fikum at-thaqalain, kitab Allah wa itrati ahlul bayti. Now you go and understand Islamic history, that when it comes to the book of God, there was no physical book of God, because the Prophet did not want to give people a book of God except that they go to Amirul Mu'mineen. And that's why when they went to the seventh Imam, Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam, they said, oh Imam, tell us, what does the Holy Prophet mean on this day when he says Kitab Allah? Then the Imam responds by saying, Kitab Allah is none other than Ali ibn Abi Talib. And that's why the final verse of Surah Ra'd reveals this phenomenon, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's the verse I have been starting every single night of my lectures with, if you had been paying attention, the final verse in Surah Ra'd, وَيَقُولَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَسْتَ مُرْسَلًا. The kafirs, the disbelievers will come to the Prophet and say, you are not a messenger. We do not profess in your messengerhood. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this line. He says, قُل. He says, say, O Prophet, وَيَقُولَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَسْتَ مُرْسَلًا قُل كَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهِيدًا. Say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come as a witness to your prophethood. But because you don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you say your eyes cannot see and your ears cannot hear, بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَكُمْ, we will introduce the one that is from us and them. وَمَنْ عَنْدَهُ إِلْمُ الْكِتَابِ, we will introduce the one that is from us and them, and the one that has knowledge of the book. Brothers and sisters, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, one of the companions of the Prophet, says, Ya Rasulullah, وَمَنْ عَنْدَهُ عِلْمُ الْكِتَابِ. In this verse, Rasulullah says, turn around, you will see him entering the mosque right now. Abu Sa'id turns around. He sees none other than Abul Hasanain, Mawla al-Kawnain, Imam al-Thaqalain, Ya'sub al-Din, Ra'is al-Muwahhidin, قائد قر المحجلين, أمير المؤمنين, أسد الله الغالب, غالب على كل غالب, مظهر العجائب, علي ibn Abi Talib عليه الصلاة والسلام. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. So in essence, brothers and sisters, Imam Ali is Kitabullah on this day. Imam Ali was the reference to Kitabullah on that day. For, I believe someone's raising their hand. I'm not sure. I'm not taking any questions right now. So Imam Ali alayhi salam in this situation is the book of God, because he himself was the retainer of the verses of the Quran in the chronology that was revealed to the Holy Prophet of Islam. And secondly, brothers and sisters, Imam Ali alayhi salam makes it clear on a very interesting occasion. In the battle of Siffin that Muawiyah was waging against Imam Ali alayhi salam during his time as Khalifa, there was a strategy on Muawiyah's side to take these pages of the Quran, rip them out, and pierce them through spears to indicate that they are also Muslims and Muslims should not be fighting other Muslims. Very strategic. In fact, today people fall into this pitfall as well. So then a certain number of people on Imam Ali's army side look at Imam Ali and says, well, they're Muslims, we shouldn't be fighting them. Look, they have a Quran going through spears. And in this occasion, it was said that Malik al-Ashtar, the commander of Imam Ali alayhi salam, was actually just 3 rows of the army away from Muawiyah. And he was about to get to Muawiyah. However, Imam Ali called him back. He says, for the people have betrayed us. Come back, Malik. Then Imam Ali alayhi salam says, oh people, those are pieces of paper. He says a line that should send chills down the believer's spine when he hears it. Oh people, those are pieces of paper. Ana Quran al-Natiq. I am the talking Quran. That is an inanimate object that cannot guide you, that cannot save you, except that you come to me for the knowledge of it. Had you have come to me, we would not have been in this war to begin with. And therefore, when we look at the Day of Ghadir, brothers and sisters, we find that it was not only just tribalistic tendencies of the Arabs of the time, but it was also, in essence, a vow from Shaitan that happened in our pre-existence during the time of Prophet Adam, that he would say that for as long as I continue to live, I will try to misguide people from the straight path. And an interesting poem that was written by Rumi, which by the way, I do not agree with his theological tendencies, but it's a very interesting poem to read. He says that he writes a poem saying one day Muawiyah was asleep and Shaitan woke him up. Muawiyah wakes up and Shaitan is sitting there in front of him saying, go and pray. And Muawiyah is looking at him and says, aren't you supposed to, help me get deeper in my sleep and not pray? And then Shaitan says, it's better for me that a person like you prays, because you instill false confidence in those that follow you, that you are indeed a righteous man. But oh Muawiyah, between you and I know what filth you're made of. And therefore, what you find today, brothers and sisters, if you see people praying, if you see people doing tawaf around the Kaaba, if you see people praying for hours upon hours upon hours, Imam Sadiq has an interesting saying. He says, Shaitan's only focus is on our Shia. Shaitan's only primarily, he's zoned in on the Shia. Why? Because Shaitan doesn't care if they're doing tawaf 1,000 times around the Kaaba without the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'minin, because they don't have Sirat al-Mustaqim. He doesn't care if they're praying 1,000 times a day, but with a belief system that is corrupted, that is okay with spreading Islam with the sword, that is okay with going around pillaging villages and setting things on fire in the name of Allah. Shaitan doesn't care about the salat of the suicide bombers. Shaitan does not care about the fasts of ISIS and Taliban. He doesn't care. Let them do it. You know what? He's embarrassing you more. Go, keep. In fact, Shaitan gives tawfiq for these kind of people. He gives them a nice voice to recite Quran. So when you sit there and you think, you go, he has such a melodious voice when he recites the word of God. I can't help but think he's a great person. He's a great person of great belief and virtue because he sounds nice when he recites. We give merit to these things, brothers and sisters, that we don't realize. That the ultimate essence of belief far outweighs someone's singing voice and far outweighs any kind of action, because the action must be guided through proper belief. Let's take a moment there and take a quick pause. I have about 5 minutes left in my lecture topic. That covers tonight's main thing, that had the Prophet had let the people to believe that there was a Quran available, surely he would have been certain that there was a Quran available, yet history dictates that there wasn't. There was, but the people rejected him. And whenever 3 days later, after Imam Ali would finish washing the body of the Holy Prophet, he would come out with this Quran. And this is recorded in our book, Basa'ir al-Darajat. And this book is also is a primary source that one of the companions of the 11th Imam would go about writing. So this is what we mean when absolutes, when the Imams are instructing us about this knowledge, the student is writing it down. It's as though we have access to the Prophet directly. So Basa'ir al-Darajat, it is mentioned that Amir al-Mu'minin, after 3 days of compiling all of his works in the chronology with his commentary on this Quran, would go on to give it to Abu Bakr and say, this is the Quran, and Abu Bakr would rebuke and say, I do not want such a book. I don't want it from you. We'll make our own version. And the other people would say, yes, we don't want Ali's Quran. And Imam Ali would go on to warn to say, if you don't take the Quran as it is in my hand now, then you will not see it until the time of Imam al-Mahdi, ajrallahu ta'ala. And the people will go on to reject it. That said, does it mean this Quran is not the same Quran as Imam Ali alayhi salam? That is between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Imams. But the Imams have instructed that even the Quran you possess right now, through our guidance, you will be guided. And therefore, we must be open to the fact that when Imam al-Mahdi ajallahu ta'ala faraj comes, that he will come and correct a lot of the issues that these historical figures of corruption did cause to our religion. Forgive me. Finally, in my last few minutes, I just wanted to discuss the death of Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam. For on this night, brothers and sisters, as you know, there are two main people that were affected in these past 3 nights. The orphans would sit outside the house in these 3 nights that Imam Ali was wounded on the 19th, waiting for their father to show up. For Imam Ali alayhi salam was the father of the orphans. And therefore, on these nights, please, brothers and sisters, if you can make an effort to send some support to the orphans, do not forget about that. Imam Ali alayhi salam would go on, lie in the bed after being struck, and the orphans would be waiting outside until finally they heard that there was a man struck in his salat. The second person that would be affected by this would be an old blind man who would be sitting on the curb during these last few nights by himself, hitting himself, thinking that perhaps he had said something wrong to his best friend that would come and visit him every night and recite Quran with him. For he was a stranger, for he was a person that nobody would go to, for he was blind and he could barely walk. On this night, brothers and sisters, their friend and their father would leave. And that's why you find a tradition, brothers and sisters, a very beautiful one that indicates the level of love Imam Ali alayhi salam had for all of humanity. And that's when you find that Imam Ali alayhi salam instructs Imam al-Hasan, tell the people visiting me to please leave and to please quiet their voices, for this venom that I have been struck with is now starting to make my head hurt very much, and I have become very sensitive to the sound around me. And therefore, Imam Ali alayhi salam would tell Imam Hassan to go and do this. Imam Hassan would go and come back, and again, Imam Ali would hear noise outside of his house, and he would tell Imam Hassan, he said, he would say, Hassan, I told you to tell people to quiet down. Imam says, Father, I can't tell them to calm down, for they are the kids that you used to feed in the dark of the night. They are outside of the door, they have surrounded the door, and they all have a bowl of milk for you to drink from. They have heard that you were struck, and these may be your last moments, and they want you to know that if their father worked for them their entire life, that maybe they can come and repay him with what they had. So these orphans would go, and Imam Ali says, Hassan, grab all the bowls of milk, pour it into a larger bowl, and allow me to drink from it. Let these kids' hearts be fulfilled, knowing that their father drank from each and every one of their hand, and he was happy with them. And the second person we would run into at this point would be after Imam Hassan and Hussein would go on to bury Amir al-Mu'mineen in the dark of the night. As you know, brothers and sisters, for over 100 years, we didn't know where Imam Ali alayhi salam was buried, simply because of the amount of hatred these Arabs had for the wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On their way back from burying Imam Ali alayhi salam in Najaf, they would hear the crying of an old man. Imam Hassan would go up to him, old man, what has bothered you? He says, I had a friend who used to visit me every night, and I'm very upset at myself. He says, why? He says, I think I may have said something to him to upset him. He doesn't visit me anymore. Imam Hassan says, oh man, can you describe your friend? Maybe we can find him for you and fix the issue. He says, he used to come visit me and bathe me, and he used to feed me and put the food in my mouth for me, for I was blind and I was paralyzed. And he would recite Quran in this way that my house began to tremble with the way of his recitation. Oh man, little did we know that that man was the walking, talking Quran that was visiting you. Truly, this was the mercy of Allah manifest in Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. And on this night, brothers and sisters, we lose him. He goes and reunites. And it is no wonder that he says, Futhtu wa Rabbil Kaaba, by the Lord of the Kaaba, I have succeeded. That Imam Ali has finished his test and he can go and reunite with the Holy Prophet of Islam and Bibi Fatima Zahra, salam Allahu alayha. But I say, brothers and sisters, that old man that nobody used to pay attention to was lucky enough to be in the presence of their Imam. Brothers and sisters, today in the occultation of Imam al-Zaman, we are orphans and we beg Imam to please give us the same blessings of that old blind man, so that you come and visit us as well, and you can come and talk to us and recite Quran with us. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, may you hasten the reappearance of our beloved 12th Imam, Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.